All right, let's dive into this. The science of change. It's pretty fascinating stuff, and we're going to be unpacking, well, some of the key ideas from Chip and Dan Heath's book, Switch: How to Change Things When Change is Hard.
It's like a cheat sheet,
Yeah.
almost, for why change can be such a pain sometimes.
Yeah.
And more importantly, what you can actually do to make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. We'll be looking at all kinds of change from, personal goals to bigger things like influencing teams at work, even, community challenges.
And a lot of what we think we know about change, turns out it's just plain wrong. We'll bust some of those myths today.
Love it. Busting myths. So by the end of this deep dive, you should have a whole new perspective on why, get this, focusing on problems can actually prevent change.
Yeah, it sounds counterintuitive, but stick with us.
And you'll get some very specific strategies you can use right away, whether you're trying to, I don't know, finally stick to those New Year's resolutions or, tackle something bigger in your life.
It all starts with the psychology behind it. And the Heath brothers, they use a really great analogy to explain it.
The writer and the elephant, right?
Exactly.
I gotta admit, when I first heard that, I was like, okay, this is a little whimsical. But then I read the book and it all clicked.
It's powerful, surprisingly so. Picture it. Your mind is like a rider on top of an elephant. The rider is your rational side, thinks long-term, plans, knows what's best for you.
But the elephant, on the other hand.
The elephant, well, that's all about emotion, instinct, instant gratification. Wants it now.
So the writer can have all these amazing plans, but if the elephant doesn't want to move.
You're going nowhere fast.
Mhm.
The elephant ultimately calls the shots, drives the action.
It's like, okay, I know I should be eating a salad, but then there's a plate of cookies
Okay.
and.
And your rider knows the salad's the healthier choice, but your elephant wants those cookies now.
Yeah, the cookies usually win, in my world at least. But this analogy, it goes deeper than just like explaining temptation, doesn't it? It's about why change just wears us out.
Exactly. The Heath brothers, they argue willpower is a finite resource. Every time we resist, force ourselves to do something we don't want to, we're draining those reserves.
Like that experiment where people had to resist freshly baked cookies, remember that one? And then later they were given a tough task and they just gave up way faster than those who hadn't had to resist anything. It's like they were just, I don't know, spent.
That's it. What we see as laziness, lack of motivation, it's often just plain exhaustion. Willpower fuel tank's empty.
So how do we fix this? How do we stop our riders from getting trampled by, those emotional elephants?
One big thing is making change clear and simple. And that's where scripting the critical moves comes in.
Okay, scripting. Tell me more about that.
Think of it this way. Change is often overwhelming, right? Because we don't know where to start. A million options, decision paralysis sets in.
Oh, I know that feeling too well.
Right. But if we can take a big goal, break it down into smaller steps,
Mhm.
and then give people a clear script on how to do those steps.
It's like giving the rider a map, so the elephant doesn't have to wander around getting lost and confused.
Exactly. And this approach, it's surprisingly effective even with complex issues.
There's an example in the book, right? Something about, was it a railroad company?
Yes, a failing Brazilian railroad.
Yeah.
Alexander Bering took it over, and it was a mess, inefficiency, debt, the works. He didn't try to fix everything at once. Instead, he put in place 4 simple rules to guide all decision-making.
4 rules. Like what?
Things like only invest in projects that make money quickly and keep upfront costs low, even if the long-term solution isn't perfect.
So very practical, hands-on guidelines.
And they cut through the chaos, provided clarity. That's what happened. Those rules, they were the script for Bering and his team.
It's a great example of making change feel doable, breaking it down into those clear steps. But sometimes, even with a script, the big goals, they can still feel daunting. How do we keep people from getting discouraged?
That's where bright spots come in. This is one of my favorite ideas.
Oh, I love the bright spot concept. So optimistic. Tell me more.
Instead of dwelling on problems, on what's wrong, the bright spot approach says, look for what's already working. Where are you seeing success, even in the middle of challenges?
It's like instead of staring at what's broken, look for those sparks of hope that can, I don't know, ignite bigger change.
Yeah. And the book tells the story of Jerry Sternin. He was tasked with fighting malnutrition in Vietnam. And instead of trying to solve, the whole poverty problem, he focused on finding kids who are already healthy. against the odds.
So he was looking for those outliers, those kids thriving in a tough environment. What did he find?
He found that the families of these kids, they were doing things differently. Small things, but significant. They were feeding their kids smaller meals more often, adding sweet potato greens to their rice.
So instead of some top-down solution, Stonin found solutions that were like already happening organically.
Exactly. And this, it can be applied to anything. Instead of asking, what's broken and how do we fix it? Ask, what's working and how do we do more of it?
Love that shift in perspective. It's about finding those pockets of success and figuring out how to make them bigger.
And it's more inspiring, too. When you focus on what's working, people feel hopeful. They start to believe change is possible.
Okay, so we've got the writer and the elephant, the scripting, the bright spots. But there's another piece, right? Giving the elephant a destination worth moving towards.
You're talking about a clear, compelling vision. It's not just about telling people what to do or how to do it. It's about giving them a reason to care.
The destination postcard, right?
Yes. Imagine you're planning a trip. You wouldn't just say, I'm going to travel for a few weeks. You'd have a place in mind, and maybe even a picture of it, a postcard, to remind you why you're going on that journey.
So the postcard, it's that emotional pull of the goal.
Exactly. And we need that same pull for change. We need to give people a destination that's worth the effort, something that excites them, that motivates them.
And the book tells the story about a Teach for America teacher, right? Setting a big, bold goal for her students.
Crystal Jones, yeah. She was teaching first graders who were really behind in reading. And instead of just saying, improve reading levels, she went bold. She told her students, by the end of the year, you'll be third graders.
Wow. Ambitious. Did it work?
It did. Those kids, they were inspired by this vision of themselves as third graders, and they worked hard. By the end of the year, a lot of them were reading at a third grade level.
Amazing. It shows the power of a goal that's not just smart, specific, measurable, all that, but also emotionally powerful.
A destination postcard is more than just a goal. It's a story. It's a picture of what's possible, something that fuels people's passion.
It makes me think of all the times I've set goals that were, technically sound, but they just didn't excite me. And no wonder I struggled.
It happens.
Yeah.
We get so focused on the mechanics of setting goals that we forget about the emotional side. And without that, it's hard to stay motivated, especially when things get tough.
So we need to give our elephants both a clear path and a destination worth reaching. But even with all this in place, there's still a big question, isn't there?
What's that?
How do we actually motivate people to act? Because knowing what to do and wanting to do it are two very different things.
You're right. And here's where the Heath brothers introduce a concept that's, well, it can be a bit uncomfortable. They say we have a natural tendency to focus on problems. And this problem focus, it can actually sabotage our efforts to change things for the better.
Never thought about it that way. But I can see how dwelling on problems leads to negativity and, feeling discouraged.
It's a trap. We see it everywhere. News, work, even in our personal lives. So much time analyzing what's wrong that we miss chances to celebrate what's right.
Guilty as charged. I get caught up in trying to fix things, forget to acknowledge the progress we've made.
And this negativity bias, it's even stronger with goals. Think of a report card. Your kid brings home mostly good grades, but there's one F. Where does your attention go?
To the F, of course. Got to figure out what happened, how to fix it.
Natural reaction. But what about the other grades, the good ones? Why not focus on those successes and figure out how to, replicate them?
Good point. It's about shifting our focus from what's not working to what is working.
Exactly. And it applies to change, too. Instead of obsessing over obstacles and challenges, what if we focused on those bright spots? The areas where we're already seeing good results.
So using those bright spots to fuel motivation to show that change is possible.
Precisely. By highlighting successes, celebrating progress, we create a more positive, encouraging environment. And that helps overcome resistance and build momentum.
This is all making a lot of sense. But what about when, even with a clear goal, a positive outlook, and those bright spots, we just can't seem to decide?
You're talking about decision paralysis. It's a common roadblock, and it's frustrating. You know what you want to do, but taking that first step feels impossible.
It's me all the time, overwhelmed by options, overthinking everything, and then bam, stuck in action.
It's a common trap. The Heath brothers, they talk about how more options can actually make decisions harder. There's a study they cite. People were more likely to buy jam when they had fewer choices. More choices led to less action.
That's counterintuitive. But I get it. Too many options, our brains go into overdrive. Analysis paralysis.
We try so hard to make the perfect decision that we end up making no decision at all. And that's where scripting those critical moves can really help.
Right. By having clear instructions, no ambiguity, we feel less overwhelmed and taking action becomes easier.
Simplify the decision-making, remove that temptation to overthink.
Love that. But what about those times when we still find ourselves, talking ourselves out of taking action, coming up with excuses, reasons why we can't or shouldn't do something?
That's a good question. And this is where the Heath brothers talk about black and white goals, or BMW goals.
BMW goals, like the cars.
Not quite. BMW goals are all or nothing. No gray areas, no room for rationalization.
Okay, I'm listening. Example.
Say you want to eat healthier. You might set limits like 1 cookie a day or dessert only on weekends. But those leave room for interpretation.
Oh, for sure. We're masters at finding loopholes. It's a small cookie, or it's technically Sunday night, so it still counts as the weekend.
Right. But a BMW goal for healthy eating would be something like no processed sugar, no wiggle room, black or white. You're either doing it or you're not.
I see the power in that. No negotiating with yourself.
Those BMW goals, they're especially good for big, tough changes. Force you to commit, no backsliding.
This is making me rethink my whole goal-setting approach. So many times I've set those vague, better-than-nothing goals and then wondered why I didn't make any real progress.
Common trap. But those BMW goals, as uncomfortable as they might be at first, they can be incredibly effective.
So, wow, we've covered a lot already in this first part of our deep dive. The rider and the elephant, scripting, bright spots, destination postcards, BMW goals.
And we're just getting started.
There's so much more to explore.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the science of change.
So we're picking up where we left off, looking at how to make change, not just possible, but actually, contagious.
And that brings us to, well, social influence, which is a pretty fascinating area.
Okay, yeah, I'm intrigued. I mean, we're all influenced by others, right? But how do we actually use that for positive change?
Think about, how easily yawns spread. One person does it, and then suddenly everyone's yawning.
Oh, yeah, totally contagious. Or those dance crazes that go viral?
Exactly. It's about realizing that, as humans, we're wired to follow the herd, even when we don't realize it.
So kind of like peer pressure, but for good.
Yeah, you could say that. Think about gyms and fitness studios. They create that sense of community, like you're all committed to fitness together.
So it's not just you battling the couch anymore. You're part of a group, all going for the same goal.
Exactly. And that sense of belonging, of shared purpose, it's incredibly motivating.
It's like accountability, but also, feeling like you're on a team.
The Heath brothers, they talk about the 100,000 Lives campaign. It was led by Dr. Don Berwick, and they wanted to reduce preventable deaths in hospitals.
That's a huge undertaking. How do they use social influence to make it happen?
Yeah. Well, they didn't just hand hospitals information and tools. They connected them with each other, created a network where they could support and learn from each other.
Ah, so hospitals could see that others were making these changes work, and that motivated them to do it too.
Yeah, it created momentum. That feeling of, if they can do it, so can we.
That's how change becomes contagious then. Not about forcing people, but about creating an environment where change just seems like, the natural thing to do.
Right. It's tapping into that social influence, that desire to be part of something bigger than yourself. That's what makes those big, audacious changes seem possible.
This is inspiring stuff. But what about those times when people are, just resistant to change, like really resistant?
Well, that's where we got to remember the elephant. Remember that analogy. Resistance, it often comes from fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of losing something familiar.
So it's not that people are against change itself, but more like they're scared of what it might mean for them.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to address those fears directly. Acknowledge them, reassure people. Sometimes it's about meeting people where they are.
Meeting people where they are. What does that mean exactly when it comes to change?
It means understanding that not everyone's going to jump on board with your vision right away. Some people need more time, more information, more support to embrace change.
So instead of pushing people to change, it's more like gently pulling them forward.
Exactly. It's about creating a space where people feel safe to explore, where they can ask questions, share their worries, and gradually warm up to the idea of change.
This makes me think of times I've tried to implement changes too quickly without really taking the time to understand people's concerns. No wonder I got pushback.
Yeah, it's a common mistake. We get excited about our vision and want to charge ahead. But change takes time, and it takes empathy and patience.
So how do we meet people where they are, practically speaking?
It starts with listening. really listening to people's concerns and trying to see things from their perspective,
Even if that perspective is totally different from our own.
especially then. It's about finding common ground, building trust,
Yeah.
and showing that you value their input.
And sometimes it's about, framing the change in a way that connects with people's values, their motivations.
Right. The Heath brothers talk about that. If we can link the change to something people already care about, something that fits with their sense of identity, their purpose, it's way more likely to stick.
So it's not just about what we're changing, but why we're doing it and how that why resonates with people on a deeper level.
Exactly. Making change meaningful, not just mechanical. That's what makes it transformative.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together, the bright spots, the destination postcards, the scripting, the social influence, meeting people where they are. It's like a whole ecosystem of change.
That's a great way to put it. And the Heath brothers, they have even more insights. One that really stood out to me is shaping the path.
Shaping the path. Okay, what's that all about?
It's about making the desired behavior the easiest choice. Remember that popcorn experiment we talked about?
The one where people ate more stale popcorn just because they were given a bigger bucket?
Yeah. It wasn't about them being greedy, it was about the environment they were in. The bigger bucket made it easier to eat more, even though the popcorn wasn't any better.
So shaping the path means setting things up so that people are naturally nudged towards the behavior we want.
Exactly. Instead of relying on willpower, we can make change feel effortless by removing obstacles and making the desired behavior the path of least resistance.
Okay, I can see how powerful this could be. Any real-world examples?
Tons. Think about grocery stores that put healthy snacks near the checkout line, or apps that make tracking your exercise and eating super easy.
Or those cities that make it easier to walk or bike by having dedicated lanes and making streets more pedestrian-friendly.
Yep, those are all shaping the path. By making the desired behavior more convenient and accessible, we increase the chances people will actually do it.
So it's not about forcing change, but about making it easier to choose change.
And this applies to everything, big or small.
Yeah.
Whether you're trying to, encourage your team to be more innovative or get your family to eat healthier, shaping the path can make a difference.
This is great stuff. But I have to ask, is there a risk of, being too manipulative with this? Like, are we tricking people into changing?
That's a fair point.
Right.
It's important to use these techniques ethically. The goal isn't manipulation, but empowerment, helping people make choices that align with their own goals and values.
So creating an environment that supports positive change, not forcing it on people.
Exactly. And the Heath brothers are big on transparency. People should know that their environment is being, shaped in a way to encourage certain behaviors.
No sneaky stuff. It's about being intentional and thoughtful about how we design things to support the changes we want to see.
Right. And when it's done well, shaping the path can make change last longer, make it more sustainable.
Okay, I'm really seeing the potential here. But what about when change isn't just met with resistance, but with outright hostility? What about those people who are actively trying to sabotage our efforts?
That's a tough one.
Mm.
There's no easy answer. But the Heath brothers, they suggest focusing on finding allies, people who already support your vision and can help you gain momentum.
So finding those bright spots in the social landscape, those individuals or groups who are already open to change.
Exactly. And sometimes it's about finding common ground with those who are resistant. Are there any shared goals or values you can appeal to?
So not about converting everyone to your side, but building bridges, finding those points of connection.
Right. And sometimes it's about choosing your battles. Not every fight is worth it. Sometimes it's smarter to focus your energy on areas where you're more likely to see progress.
Okay, this is all really helpful, but what about changing ourselves? How do we use these principles for personal growth?
Great question. The Heath brothers have some specific advice for that. One of their key recommendations is to shrink the change.
Shrink the change? What do you mean?
Breaking down a big, scary goal into smaller, more manageable steps. Remember, our elephants don't like being overwhelmed.
So instead of trying to change everything at once, focus on one small change at a time.
Exactly. And they even suggest starting with something so small, it seems almost ridiculously easy.
Like what? Give me an example.
Say you want to exercise more. Instead of trying to run a marathon, start with, committing to a 5-minute walk every day.
5 minutes? That does seem ridiculously easy.
But that's the point. By starting small, we build momentum, we gain confidence. And once that small change is mastered, you can gradually make it more challenging.
So it's like building a habit one tiny step at a time.
Right. And the Heath brothers also talk about celebrating those small wins. Every time you hit a mini goal, no matter how small, take a moment to acknowledge it. Reward yourself.
This goes back to what you said earlier about focusing on bright spots. It's about noticing what's working, even when things are tough.
Exactly. By celebrating those small wins, we reinforce the positive changes, and that keeps us motivated.
I love this approach. It feels so much more manageable, less daunting than trying to change my whole life overnight.
And it's more likely to lead to real, lasting change. Because when change is built on those small wins, it creates a positive feedback loop that pushes you forward.
This is all so insightful, but I have one more question about personal change. What about those times when we know what to do, but we just can't seem to get ourselves to actually do it?
The motivation slump. We've
Yeah.
all been there. And the Heath brothers have a few ideas for that. One is to find your feeling.
Find my feeling. Okay, explain that one.
It's about figuring out what emotion will drive you to act. Sometimes it's excitement, sometimes fear, sometimes anger. Whatever it is, you need to tap into that emotion and let it fuel your motivation.
So, like getting our emotional elephant to move in the right direction.
Exactly. One way to do this is to really imagine what'll happen if you don't change. What are the downsides of staying stuck?
So, using fear as a motivator, isn't that, I don't know, a bit manipulative?
It can be, but it can also be really effective. Sometimes we need that extra push, and fear can be a powerful motivator as long as you use it ethically.
So, it's about finding that emotional trigger, that sense of urgency to get us moving.
Right. And sometimes it's about finding a role model, someone who's already made the change you want to make. Their story can inspire you, give you a path to follow.
So, surrounding ourselves with positive influences in our lives and in our minds.
Exactly. And when we create that environment that supports change, both inside and out, it becomes so much easier to reach our goals.
This has been such a great conversation. I'm already thinking about all the ways I can use these ideas in my own life. But before we finish up, is there anything else you want to share about the science of change?
Oh, there's so much more we could talk about. But I think the most important thing to remember is this. Change is a journey, not a destination.
Love that. It reminds us that change isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing process.
And it's a process that takes patience, persistence, and a willingness to experiment. You'll hit roadblocks, face challenges, and there will be times you'll want to give up.
Oh, yeah, I know those times all too well.
But that's okay. It's all part of the journey. The key is to keep moving forward, even if it's just one small step at a time.
And to remember that every setback is a chance to learn and try something new.
Exactly. And don't forget to celebrate those small wins along the way, because even tiny progress is still progress.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive. I feel like I have a whole new set of tools for approaching change.
That's great to hear. And remember, change is within your reach. You have the power to make it happen.
So for everyone listening, what's your bright spot? What one small change could you make today that would put you on the path towards a goal that really matters?
We challenge you to take action, to embrace the science of change, and to create a world where positive change is the norm, not the exception.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We'll see you next time for another exploration of ideas that matter.
Welcome back to our deep dive. We're talking all things change, remember?
Yeah, we've covered a lot. Rider and the elephant, bright spots, shaping the path.
Right.
But before we wrap up, I wanted to go back to something we touched on earlier, making change, contagious, spreading it around.
Oh, yeah. I remember. We were talking about gyms, right? And how those fitness studios create that feeling of community, like we're all in this together.
Exactly. And it's not just for fitness, This idea works for all sorts of change. The Heath brothers tell this really interesting story about a hotel chain, how they got way more people to reuse their towels.
Okay, I'm all ears. How'd they do that? Give out prizes or something?
Nope, way simpler. They just changed the message on those little cards in the bathrooms, the ones?
Yeah.
Instead of the usual, help save the environment, they said, join your fellow guests in saving the environment. Almost 75% of guests reuse their towels. So they made it seem like everyone was already doing it.
Exactly. They tapped into that social influence thing, that desire to be like everyone else.
Like peer pressure, but in a good way, right?
Exactly. And guess what? It worked. Way more people started reusing their towels.
That's wild. A simple message change, and boom, people's behavior shifts.
It's powerful stuff. And it works for big changes, too, not just towels. Remember the 100,000 Lives campaign we talked about?
Yeah, the one to reduce deaths in hospitals, right?
Yep, that one. They used a similar approach, connected all the hospitals so they could learn from each other, support each other.
Right, like a network of change makers.
Exactly. And it created this feeling of, well, if everyone else is doing it, we can too. Like that saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Love that saying. Really highlights how important community and collaboration are, especially when we're talking about making change that lasts.
Absolutely. So we've covered a lot, right? The
Yeah.
psychology, the bright spots, shaping the path, the power of social influence. Anything else we need to know about making change happen?
Yeah. Any final nuggets of wisdom?
One last thing. Change. It's rarely a straight line.
What do you mean?
I mean, it doesn't always happen in a nice, neat, predictable way. You're going to hit bumps. You're going to have to take detours. There'll be times you just want to quit.
Oh, yeah. I know those times all too well.
It's normal. It's all part of the process. The important thing is just keep moving, even if it's just tiny steps.
And to remember that those setbacks, they're not failures. They're opportunities to learn and adjust.
Exactly. And celebrate those small wins along the way. 'Cause even a little bit of progress is still progress.
I feel like I've gotten a whole new perspective on change from this deep dive. It's been really insightful.
That's great to hear. And remember, change is possible. You have the power to make it happen.
So everyone listening, what's your bright spot? What one small change could you make today to start moving towards a goal you really care about? Think about it.
Yeah. We challenge you to take action.
Oh,
Embrace what we've talked about, this science of change. Let's create a world where positive change is just the way things are, not some rare exception.
thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We'll catch you next time, ready to explore more ideas that matter.